EDSI Consulting is a division of EDSI, and our parent company runs workforce development programs around the country, often working with dislocated workers. And what we heard from our parent company is that in our quest to assess dislocated workers, train them, and find them new employment, the process was slowing and becoming extremely difficult, especially when the Great Recession hit. Historically, workforce development agencies throughout the country have utilized layoff aversion services to minimize job losses within their respective regions. And in most cases, the layoff aversion activities that occurred were related to training individuals to upskill them so they had the skills to fill the available jobs. What we saw is when the Great Recession occurred is that that process really was not sufficient to avert layoffs because they weren't getting to the root cause of the problem. Instead, they were only addressing tangential training issues with the workforce. At the same time, our workforce development programs were having budget cuts, they were getting less resources, less time, and more people coming through their doors. So what was happening is the number of dislocated workers per employee in our service centers had gone up dramatically. And the amount of jobs that were available to put these workers into, or these dislocated workers into, had gone down dramatically. So we needed to create a system that got to the root cause of the problem, and that is stopping the dislocation of the worker before it happens. And really getting to the real root, and that is stabilizing an at-risk company before it has layoffs or closes altogether. The EDSI Layoff Aversion system is made up of multiple steps. After the early warning network is developed, the next step is having a one-on-one discussion with the company that is at risk and determining if that company wants to participate in the program. 95% plus of all the companies that we've talked to that have been identified have participated, have chosen to participate in our program. Once that happens, we help the company write a grant to ensure that the funding covers our costs through the layoff aversion system. So, if we think about from a process standpoint, we have to develop the early warning network, and then the next step is discussions with the company. After the discussions, we write the grant. The grant is then submitted to the local WIB. After it's approved, we'll have a kickoff meeting. And that's really to talk to a larger number of the employees at the company to help them understand the process and what we're going to need from them and what we're going to do while we're working with them, and to understand the results that we would anticipate they will get when they're done with this program. So after the kickoff meeting, we go into something that we call the proactive business review, which is really the heart of our layoff aversion system. The proactive business review looks at all parts of the company. We look at the organization, we look at key processes, we look at manufacturing, we look at warehousing and distribution, we look at sales, marketing, finance, purchasing, HR, really all the key functions. We'll look at the key processes, we'll look at strategic, and then we'll also look at the financial results of the company. The point is, we want to get the company stabilized. And we need to look at the entire entity to figure out what are the core problems that are creating distress or leading this company to be an at-risk company. So once we've completed the proactive business review, we then move on to the next phase, which is a management review. And during the management review, we discuss the findings of the proactive business review. What did we find? What did we see? What were our key observations, and what do we think are the priority changes that they need to implement to ensure the company will be stabilized and get healthy again? At this phase, what we do is we take the top items, We put them in priority order. We ensure that we get management buy-in to that priority list because it has to be their list, not ours. We want them to be bought into ensuring that the changes are going to happen to stabilize the company. So after that phase, we've agreed on a set of key priorities. Then we ask the management team, what are those key changes that you're going to make that you need training on so we can help you? And the training that we do then is really workshop type training, where not only are we teaching them how to do it, but we're helping them implement those changes at the same time. So it's hands-on training. And the key element here is that the training that we work with them on is led to direct implementation, and it's all about those key items that will help stabilize the company. So when we start, we've identified a company. By the time we get to the end, we've got a key set of activities that need to be implemented. We train the management team how to implement them, and they begin implementing their own stabilization plan to ensure their company is stabilized and is going to be a healthy entity long into the future. Our process is an off-the-shelf process. You may ask yourself, well, wait a minute, every company is not going to have the same needs. And that's exactly right. In fact, virtually every company we deal with has different needs in terms of the training and the changes that it needs to implement. So let me give you an example. Because we have dozens and dozens and dozens of different training events that we do based on the specific needs of that company. For example, many companies need to stabilize their cash flows, and they need to develop a stabilization plan. So what we do is we work with the management team, we train them what a stabilization plan is, we train them how to build a stabilization plan, and then we work with them to actually build that stabilization plan as part of the training. Now the result of that plan may be very, very different from one company to the next, but it's largely because we've showed the team how to build it, what they have to do, we've helped them build it, but the results of that plan may be very different from one company to the next. We have typically used incumbent worker training funds to fund our layoff aversion system. It's important that funds, public funds, are used to cover 100% of the cost of the layoff aversion system because at-risk companies are frequently so concerned about paying rent, making payroll, paying their vendors, paying their debt service, that oftentimes they have no additional cash to fund any other type of activities and are very concerned about spending money on outside resources. When we're able to fund 100% of the layoff aversion program with incumbent worker training funds, it takes that whole concern away and it provides a branch of support to these companies that need it. Now, with incumbent worker training funds, it's critical that the process to be WEA compliant, that it is an off-the-shelf process. And our process is completely off the shelf. We use the same exact process time and time again, all the way from the early warning network through the process of training the team to implement the changes that they need to implement. At EDSI Consulting, we have led multiple layoff aversion programs. The EDSI Layoff Aversion system is predicated on turnaround management principles. What we do is we identify the at-risk company. We work with that company to identify core problems that need to be addressed, and then we train the management team and the workforce in terms of implementing the changes that need to occur to stabilize that company. The biggest obstacle to the EDSI Layoff Aversion system is really one of inertia and the unwillingness to change from past practices. What we found is the very progressive workforce investment boards that exist around the country are very interested in our program. And some of the more conservative workforce development agencies have been concerned because it's just different than what they've done in the past. But once they see that it's fully compliant and that it has tremendous benefits, then they begin to open up to it. So what we encourage people is to look at the program and to understand that it really gets to the root cause of job losses, and it's truly a layoff aversion program and not just another training program. Historically, we've used incumbent worker training funds to run and to fund our layoff aversion programs. And what we've seen is 100% success in the at-risk companies that have participated in these programs, and in many cases, job growth within those companies, and an incredibly high return on investment in that the payback period for the funds used per employee is less than $500, which is far less than would be experienced should they have gone through a standard layoff aversion program, or had they become unemployed and received benefits, insurance, and all the other tangential negatives that occur when somebody is dislocated within a community. In other parts of the country, rapid response funds are being looked at to fund layoff aversion programs. So wherever you are, there's an opportunity for you to look at different types of funding that may exist to drive layoff aversion within your region. The reality is this is a highly cost-effective method to ensure that the people going into your one-stops are minimized. This layoff aversion system was very new and unique and took hold throughout Michigan and then spread throughout other parts of the country. When we look at the results of our layoff aversion system, we have had a 100% success rate of the companies that have worked with us. We have not had one company that has failed that has gone through the EDSI Layoff Aversion system. And the cost is less than $500 per employee. When you look at other statistics, workforce development statistics or economic development statistics, this is a highly cost-effective system. In fact, the return on investment is very, very high. The payback is typically less than 1 month in terms of paying back the funds that have been used for the EDSI Layoff Aversion system.